Welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio, your show for all things positive. Hello and welcome to K-Wave 6 Radio. This is Kirk Spencer, your host. If you hear some crackling in the background, it's only because I'm doing this recording while there's a thunderstorm going on. Anyway, despite that, today we're doing a show that is just me. I've had my first two shows with guests. We're still talking about cognitive dissonance, and this is part 3, which I just titled Enlightened-Aware. I prefer to use the word cognizant, but that doesn't seem to get across the message to a lot of people. The reason why I want to use cognizant is because, just using a thesaurus online, cognizant means to be apprehensive, conscious, informed, judicious, knowledgeable, observant, and it goes on and on. But the antonyms, the words that are just the opposite of that, are ignorance, indifferent, senseless, thoughtless, unaware, uninformed, unmindful, unfamiliar, unknowledgeable, and unwitting, just to use the first two lines there. And that's what a lot of us are talking about when we're talking about awake. To be the opposite of ignorant and indifferent, uninformed and unaware. To be awake, to be cognizant of what's going on around us. And this is where we come up with the title of cognitive dissonance. Just not being aware of things, or when things are presented to you because of what you've learned or what you've been taught, you're going into this either sense of denial or there's an inner conflict going on, and what you do with that is where it takes you in your future. So today I'm actually just going to be talking about some things that kind of wraps up the first two sessions of cognitive dissonance. Where in part 1, Chad, Meek, and I, we were speaking of cognitive dissonances in general terms, and they led from anything from religion to government to things on a spiritual nature. Great deal of people are taught about what it is to be religious, but they're not really taught about what it is to be a spiritual being, to get to know whatever you want to call God or creator or source of life, grace, spirit, however you identify with the being that created us. No matter whether we can see them or not, we can actually have that conversation with. And I did say a conversation, not as I tell a lot of people that I grew up with, not just getting on your knees with a laundry list of, I need this, I want that, help me get this, and get up and going about your business without ever listening. But they're first ones to tell you that, oh, look at what happened, look at this. Well, yes, our Creator works with you on a level that you can understand. But if you want to go further, if you can get rid of that cognitive dissonance and go, hey, I can actually have a conversation with my Creator, wow. Those of us who've been doing it for some time, we say, yeah, okay, took you long enough to find that out. But anyway, as it goes, we want to move on from there. Just this week, we had cognitive dissonance part 2, and we were talking about the government and you. My guest on that show was Troy Matheson and Robert C. He prefers to keep his last name to himself, but we all call him Stash. And we spoke about the government and what we accept as a way of life, even though it is in writing about how we are supposed to live within a government. And teaching us, and it was taught from the beginning, that the government is a representation of us, not the other way around. We are the ones who tell government how and what we want and how we want to live, but we're nowadays allowing the government to tell us what to do, how to do it, when to do it, etc., etc. Now, today I'm going to talk to you about whether what you accept without question. It's going to be kind of a summary of what we've talked about and some things that we have not spoken about, and a lot of things that you probably think you know, but you don't. Or you don't know the whole picture. Not to say that I have the whole picture, but I'm going to give you more than probably what you already know. Part of this is going to be coming from experience. Another part of it is going to be coming from things that I've read and things that I know, and some from people that I know, which I will not name. But just to start, I have had a meeting, or I met someone not too long ago who has been, let's say, this person has been researching a friend of mine. And while I have told this person time and again that you're doing research on a friend that I've known for years, and I know this person well enough to know that I would trust that person with a great deal of my life, even physically, not to mention what she knows about me already. Now, this other person constantly says, I've researched, I've done this, I've done that, and I keep saying, you don't know the person. And the last thing that this person sent back to me was, well, I research politicians and do this, I do that. And I already had the discussion with that person about getting to know something, or getting to know a person, because what is written is coming from someone else who is putting their own bias into that. If you choose to believe what something else has been written about someone else, then you're accepting what is someone else's opinion. And I've invited this person to get to know my friend. Hasn't happened yet, and that's been over a month ago, or at least around a month ago. And this person continually says things about my friend. And I finally just said, I can't deal with this anymore, because I know the person that is my friend. I don't know you. And this person continually wants to look for the dirt, if you will, on this particular friend of mine. And I've told that person that, even when a person becomes a friend of mine, I watch, I listen, and I look for inconsistencies. My friend has not shown me any inconsistencies. Nothing that raises a red flag. Now, my friend is someone who is very different from your quote-unquote average person. So there were things that I had to listen to and go, that sounds a bit strange, sounds a bit weird. But my way of doing things is I allow that person to either confirm that what they're saying is true, or show me the inconsistency, which will raise the red flag, which I can either address with that person or go, this person is too far out and I can't deal with it. Well, this person is a very dear friend, so anyone who wants to talk bad about another person, I will reason, I will talk with you about it. I'm not going to argue, because you're going to end up with your own point of view anyway. So if you want reasoning, you want to understand what is, instead of accepting somebody else's opinion about someone or something, then you need to go as far or in depth as you can. If the person's living and the person is willing to meet and talk with you, wouldn't that be much better than just having to read? Now, history, we have to read, because none of us were alive 200, 300, 400 years ago, and even more. So we have to accept what has been written or passed down to us about a certain time and place in history. So the cognitive dissonance that we're talking about here is about that unwillingness to accept something that can stare you right in the face and go, this is the way it is, and that is the way somebody wants you to see it or to picture it. But let's move on. We're talking about this. We're talking about ego and cognitive dissonance. We're talking about the desire to be right and to deny other information that can prove to be the opposite. Haven't you ever met someone who says, I don't care what that says, this is the way it should be, or no, I can't believe that, I don't want to believe that. These are the kind of things and people that I'm talking about. There's something that I just wrote myself a note for. He says, for some, this means going to great lengths to have a shallow point of view or an idea rather than admitting that they're wrong and don't understand, and or don't understand fully. This is called willful ignorance. Even my father used to tell me when I was a child, he says, if I am wrong, prove it to me. Proof. Not opinion, not emotions. Prove me wrong. My father left it open. And the very extremely few times that I could ever do that, he did bow and say, hey, okay, fine, you proved me wrong. It was a challenge for me, he gave to me, was to say, if I am wrong, prove it. If I am not wrong, accept it and go from there. I accepted the challenge many times. Most of the time he was correct. A few times I could prove him wrong or prove him that he had missed a point or two. And he enjoyed that because it was a chance to exchange and to learn, exchange ideas and to learn things that he didn't know. And I do the same thing. I like it when somebody can come to me and go, hey, you're wrong, and prove it. And then go, wow, cool, all right, that works. So let's move on to a subject that many people talk about, but I've never heard anybody really explain what it is. And I'm getting, personally and truthfully, I am getting tired of hearing about this. So I figured maybe I should address this. Many people these days oftentimes talk about the Illuminati, but they don't know what it is. So I'm going to give a brief history of it. But let's start with the dictionary definition. Dictionary says Illuminati is a plural noun, it's or singular, which is illuminato. It's from the Latin, and there's two definitions here just for average understanding. Number one, persons possessing or claiming to possess superior enlightenment. Number two, a name given to different religious societies or sects, S-E-C-T-S, because of their claim to superior enlightenment. Well, down here in Mexico, I'm also an ESL teacher, English as a second language teacher, and I oftentimes tell people in my classes to look up words so they understand their meaning, even from their word origin. So the word origin for Illuminati is from the 1590s. It is a plural form of illuminatus, or enlightened, in a figurative sense, past participle of illuminare, originally applied to a 16th century Spanish sect, the Alumbrados, then to other sects since 1797, used as translation of German Illuminaten, name of a secret society founded in 1776 in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, and holding deistic and republican principles, hence used generally of freethinkers and sarcastically of those professing intellectual enlightenment. So there is your word origin. But let's step back a little bit further. Let's go back into the century of the 1600s and tell you of its origin. Now, this is probably going to lean towards feeding those who are either mindless or hateful. And I say mindless or hateful because many people tend to, instead of hating a situation or hating an event or something along those lines, hating, in other words, in short form, hating the action, they would rather hate the people or peoples that were involved in it. And that even stretches out for a whole race, a whole religion, or whatever the case may be. But very few people actually take the time to understand why that happened. It's easier to hate, unfortunately, because those who consider themselves to be informed oftentimes miss what is taught by many people, and supposedly even by many religions, except for Islam, because I haven't heard too many people from there saying this. But the term is unconditional love. In other words, I can love anyone, and I do love everyone. I don't like the actions of everyone. So separate the actions from the person. Could you have loved Hitler? Probably, as a person. But disliking his actions is what you're supposed to be doing. I don't like his actions. I hate his actions. But do I have to hate him? Not necessarily. If you can't, well, I shouldn't say not necessarily. I should say no. You don't have to hate him. Hate his actions. If you can't stop him from hurting and harming other people, then fine. Then you have to maybe, as we were taught in martial arts, is to fight them with the intent of just stopping the person without killing them. But if you can't stop without killing them, and killing is the last resort, then fine, that's what you have to do. Okay? So hopefully that's understood and nobody will go off the deep end with that one. Now, in the 1600s, there was a Jewish man by the name of Sabbatai Zevi who lived in the Middle East at that time. And the short story of it is, because I'm not going to read all of this stuff, some of it I already knew, but I thought I would pull it up just to make reference to it. Okay. He lived from August 1st of 1626 to September 17th of 1676. He was one of those who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah. He was Jewish. And because of his claim, he had many people that followed him. The powers that be at that time, and since he was living in a, shall we say, a Middle Eastern or Islamic area, this was, actually he lived in Turkey. Let me see, I want to find out, the Grand Vizier, there we go, was upset because he had a lot of people following him and they were wondering about why. So what they did was they gave him a choice that you could either convert to Islam or you could be killed. So the choice of either facing death by some type of ordeal or converting to Islam, Sabbatai seems to have chosen the latter by donning his head from then on with a Turkish turban. He was then also rewarded the heads of the by the heads of the Ottoman state with a generous pension for his compliance with their political and religious plans. I read that part. Now, what had happened was his followers, he was teaching, and also his followers agreed to do this, which was in the Talmud. There is a part where it is saying that the Messiah, or the Mashiach, would return when the earth is either mostly good or mostly evil. Now, as I've heard it said, now it's easier to get people to be evil than it is to make them good, which these days is very easy to see everywhere we go. You turn on a radio, turn on a TV, look in a magazine, a book, whatever, and you'll see a great deal of evil being expressed in many different ways, whether it's very subtle or very much in your face. So this order of his continued on, and a century later had moved into Europe during that time, and it became the Illuminati. These people were hell-bent on bringing the Messiah by going evil. Now, Judaism as a whole heard of this and found out who these people were, and they excommunicated them until the 10th generation. So there's actually a book out about this called The Secret Jew. And these people are still hell-bent on doing what it takes to make the world as evil as possible. Do I need to say more? Just take a look at the news. They're, in many ways, succeeding. Whether or not they will succeed in the final, when everything is called to a tally, we'll see. We don't know. If you live long enough, I guess we'll find out. Anyhow, he was excommunicated. He converted, but all of his followers were excommunicated and are no longer part of Judaism. So, the Illuminati actually got started in the 1700s, as we read, 1776, and it went from there. But now, let's take a step back and go back to the banking system, because I'm going to sort of kind of tie this all together. Many people like to talk about the Rothschild families and their banks and how they have done so much evil in the world. However, most of us never take a look at how far back that goes. The Rothschilds only got started in the 1700s. By that time, banking had already become something that wasn't just for the emperors of whatever nations were in existence at that time and the royals. It had become something for them as well as the general public. So the question is, and this is where I'm not going to name names because, like I said, I have some of these family people in my friendship. So I won't betray on who they are. I'll give you hints, but that's as far as it goes. This goes back until the 1400s, the 15th century. And it started just by a family who was, they were doing banking. In other words, they were doing the finances for the royals of their area. And some of them branched out and started working for and keeping the balances of the Catholic Church. So, with this in mind, they were doing a lot of things that were all related to the royalty of the era, from the 1400s and on. Well, you're getting all of this tax money and all this income coming in from your citizens, shall we say? And somebody's got to count it. Somebody's got to keep an accounting of what's coming in, what's going out, income and expenditures, and they were doing all of this. So this is where the bankers came from. Bankers were not generally the noblemen of the day. They were somebody else that had usually made a fortune on their own and managed to show the emperor that, hey, look at what I've done. And the emperor's going, hey, I need somebody that can actually keep account of my income and expenditures. I got to pay for the building of this, remodeling of that. I got to pay my armies. I've got to pay for everything else. So who can keep count of my money? So this is what was going on. This is how banking system got started. Now, I'm going to read you just a short paragraph because, like I said, these families are still in existence, and we're focusing so much on the Goldman Sachs and the Citicorps and the Federal Reserve and the Euro and the BRICS and all the rest of that, and they're just all banking families that have just said, okay, we'll run this for you and keep an accounting of what's going on, and the IMF and all that kind of stuff. Now, this is coming from a statement relating back to the 16th century, which is the 1500s, and the one paragraph says, interest rates at the time are never less than 12% per annum. And when a loan has to be raised urgently, the 16th century banker is often able to negotiate a rate of as high as 45%. And I love their closing sentence here. Banking for emperors is profitable. Now, let me ask you a question. The Americas were discovered by Europeans. The Hawaiian Islands were discovered by Europeans. Asia was discovered by Europeans. We're saying discovered, they discovered that somebody else lived there and these lands existed. But they were sailing ships around the world, discovering this, discovering that, and these lands were already occupied. But I'm going to get back to that part in just a little bit. How do you think these people were actually traveling around the world? Yes, by ship. But did they do it free? Did somebody just get together in a whole little community and say, hey, let's build a ship and let's go find out what there is out there? No. Christopher Columbus, to use the example, he approached many of the royals of his era and couldn't get anybody to finance him. So he's a man who was from Italy, ended up getting financed by Spain. Spain says, fine, go out and do this. Spain financed it. They built the ships. They had to pay somebody to build the ships. They had to pay the sailors and those who were on board some sort of salary to be there, so when they return, they have money to collect and to continue to support their families. They had to give money for food and provisions and weapons and all of these things, and then they had to pay the priest to go along with them. So all of these things took money. So who did the financing? Well, in Spain, it was it was the king and queen of Spain. In other countries that did explorations, who were the financiers? Who were the people that were doing this sort of things? If you look into it, you'll find that there are sometimes the discrepancies or the belief that some of these financiers are still in ownership of the countries that they sent explorers out to find, that were settled by Europeans. Sounds like a good income if you can get it. So from banking, we go into colonization, or colonizing a land and the people that actually happen to live on the land. Let's take a look at the word colonization, or to colonize, or colonism, actually is the word I looked up. Colonism is a noun, and there's 4 definitions, and then we'll get to the root word. The noun, the control or governing influence of a nation over a dependent country, territory, or people. 2, the system or policy by which a nation maintains or advocates such control or influence. Number 3, the state or condition of being colonial. Number 4, an idea, custom or practice peculiar to a colony. Now let's go to the word origin. The word comes from the year 1853, which means ways of speech or colonial persons. From colonial plus ism, meaning the system of colonial rule, and the definition comes from 1886. But I wanted to find out a little bit more about what colonial or colony means, so I went to Black's Law Dictionary. This is the 2nd edition, and colony by Black's Law, which is your legal definition, is colony, a dependent political community consisting of a number of citizens of the same country who have immigrated therefrom to people another and remain subject to their mother country. A settlement in a foreign country possessed and cultivated either wholly or partially by immigrants and their descendants who have a political connection with and subordination to the mother country whence they immigrated. In other words, it is a place peopled from some more ancient city or country. Now that's their definition. Well, the natives to the Americas, I would not call them a newer race or civilization. They were just not known to the European. They weren't known in European history. They're separated by the big divide called the ocean, and they didn't discover them until later. Or as Native Americans go, the beginning of America was when the natives of America discovered Columbus. So anyhow, going from there, we see that definitions mean a lot, and we need to understand this. Enlightenment and awakeness and cognitive awareness is all what we're supposed to be, instead of defending what we think is versus what literally is. You've heard me say it on other shows, possibly, that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world through our experiences. And the dissonance comes up when we see something that doesn't fit with our experiences, with our knowledge, with what we accept to be true. And for many people, unfortunately, it seems they would prefer to continue with the lies or the inconsistencies rather than to know what truly is. I am not saying by any means that I am free from this. There's things that I learn that sometimes causes that cognitive dissonance in me as well. But having what we always term as an open mind is what we need, because that will carry us through to understanding what really is versus our beliefs that we are holding on to with a death grip, because we can't let that go, because it means we would have to change the way we see life. If holding on is going to make you happy, if it's going to bring you a sense of comfort, all I can say is I hope the best for you. But there is so much to this world, to this universe, to this galaxy, than you can find in just pure ignorance. And I'm speaking bluntly on this one. Because sooner or later, if you live long enough, you will be faced with what is real versus what you have been believing and holding on to, which is false. Open your mind, see what is, accept, and make a change. You're here for a reason. If it's not to help others, then it is to learn, and then you help others. There is an expression or a quote, and it says, if you cannot help another person, at least do not hurt them. So please allow others to grow and to become a better person. It takes a while. It's not going to be something that is going to happen overnight. When you look back on it, it might seem like overnight, but it's a growth process. We can't just get let's say, a flash disk and throw it into our mind and all of a sudden, bloop, we have all the information. Sorry, we're not in the Matrix movie where somebody can load information into your brain and all of a sudden now you know how to fly a Huey helicopter, or you know how to fly an airplane, or all those different things that we saw in the Matrix movies. This is real life. Real life is, I have to learn it. I should learn it. I want to grow. I want to be a better person. I want this world to be a better place for not only me, but my children, their children, or my relatives and their children and friends and everyone. Please, open, be accepting, be aware, learn. Throw out the old that doesn't serve you and pull up something new that helps you understand, hey, we're on this planet all together. It can either be your prison or it can be your paradise. Your choice. Take care and be well. Thank you for being a part of our listening audience. Be sure to keep up with our shows and our podcast via our blog, on Twitter, and in Facebook. All links, including our RSS feed, are available at kwave6radio.tk. That's kwave6, the number 6, radio.tk. All the best.